Hey everyone, this is James here from TDB, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about raw versus ripe. Going to definitely be a bit more of a beginner-oriented episode. We will be drinking tea in this. I'm going to be comparing a steep of raw versus ripe tea. Just talking about a bit about what the differences are. They really should be thought of as kind of completely different tea categories because they present themselves very differently. You drink them in different contexts. People that like them like different things. So if you like ripe tea, it's just very, very different than raw. You should really try both. So again, this is a newbie-oriented episode. So if you are someone that has watched a lot of TDB episodes already, probably not the right one for you. Definitely worth seeking out both types to try. This comparison is not about kind of how raw pu'erh ages, but raw pu'erh is a type of pu'erh that's processed to be greener to start, and then it will slowly age and darken and deepen over time. There's a lot of nuances to that, how it's stored, how it was processed, yada, yada, yada. Not going to get too deep into that today. Ripe pu'erh, on the other hand, is a tea that is basically fermented in a 45-day process, and so this is intended to kind of mimic aged raw. So raw pu'erh came first. There's raw from the 50s, 60s, 70s, very hard to find, but it existed, they made it, and so basically what they did is they fermented it in these Hong Kong basements. It's kind of what it's known for, like these traditional Hong Kong storage, then be consumed for like dim sum or whatever. Not necessarily a very high-end beverage at that time. And so they came up with the right process, which is basically a kind of condensed way of making tea that's fermented and easier on the stomach from the get-go. So raw tea, in comparison, when drank young, is going to have a lot greener characteristics. It could be young and floral. There could be more of a bitterness, the sharpness to it. There's definitely been kind of some people have grown to like the taste of young raw, especially the way that processing has sort of changed and evolved over the time. Sometimes leaves, it's basically processed to be a bit softer, whether that's oxidation or softer rolling, and a little bit less intended to be aged. That being said, there's still an awful lot of raw pu'erh that's been created with the intention of aging too, and there's a lot of raw pu'erh aging. So, complicated topic. Let's get into drinking both of these guys. Yeah, raw is obviously intended, usually considered to be the more serious beverage, a little more complex. That's not always the case. I mean, you will have some pretty high-end ripes occasionally appearing, but typically you will have kind of the more serious drinkers will be very, very raw-focused. And I drink both. Ripe for me is usually the more casual brew here. And I can already tell you which one is raw and which one is ripe. Can't fool me this time. As you can tell from just the rinse here, one is wearing a darker color. So this one on the left is ripe. This color is pretty light for ripe too, but it'll probably darken up even more. And the one on the right is raw. So that raw is actually older. It's from 2019, but it's stored dry enough that you're definitely not getting a super dark color or anything like that. Okay, so there we go. So we will take a smell here on the one on the left. Yeah, it has a very particular smell, ripe. And it does tend to converge in taste. I'd say raw in general has kind of a wider variety. Part of that is due to the fact that it can just age. The shotching is done in a way so that you're not killing all the enzymes, so the tea can, continue to evolve. Really sweet, ripe aroma. Doesn't smell too bad. Sometimes the fresh ripes could be kind of gnarly in their presentation and a little bit fishy. So some people will say, age the ripe for a couple of years. The purpose of aging the ripe is different than raw. In this case, it's to basically let it air out and get rid of some of those more funky aromas. Different people are going to have different tolerances towards that. I'm pretty tolerant towards funkiness as far as like pu'erh is concerned, so I'm okay with that. But some people will, usually buy stuff that's like a few years old. Fresh floral, just much, much, much brighter notes. More of like a spring day versus like a winter day, and that is also seasonally kind of how people think to drink these teas, drinking the kind of raw pu'erhs, the younger raws during spring and summertime when it's a little hotter, and ripe tea is kind of like the comfortable blanket. I don't think things necessarily neatly fall as that all the time, but that's one way. It's probably true on average that I do tend to drink more ripe in the winter and more raw in the summer, even though I don't follow those rules strictly. So yeah, here we are going. So this is clearly the ripe tea. Just a little bit. I don't even remember what ratio I'm using. I think I'm using a little bit of a lighter ratio. I've been having tea throughout the day. So yeah, you can see here, darker color. And then we're gonna give this guy a soak, and we'll take a look at the wet leaves too. And you can see pretty dramatic, big differences there. And then we will brew this raw here too. So raw is definitely a type of tea that will benefit from this sort of brewing. Ripe, you can brew a number of different ways. You can definitely push it pretty good, just because it doesn't get bitter so easily because it is fermented. Raw, on the other hand, benefits immensely from kind of like this more gonku style. And so yeah, if you tried to just like toss a bunch of leaves in and brew it for 4 minutes, even if it's a pretty good quality young raw, could get quite gnarly quickly. So here is the ripe. And then yeah, we'll give this a soak well so we can take a look at what these leaves look like after we are done. Smooth, not super thick. Maybe just a slight funk, not bad. It's not a tea that's going to need a ton of airing out, for my taste at least. And another thing you can do for these ripes is just give them a 2 rinses or 3 rinses if you want. If you are very eager to get into the tea, usually that will kind of do the trick. A lot of that funkiness comes out on the first infusion or 2. So yeah, definitely give the tea a rinse too. That's pretty standard practice when it comes to kind of just tea in general in this format. Okay, so here we go. The raw here on my right. So we will do the reveal as well. While we're letting those guys soak. Cheers. So this is thicker, definitely more complex, more of a complex mouthfeel, a little bit of mouth cooling going on. But overall, it's like floral, a little bitter, but not bad. You can tell that the bitterness, oftentimes, raw pu'erh will definitely be a more bitter tea than most of the types of tea you're gonna consume, especially when it's young like this. The trick is to pay attention to how that bitterness changes and whether it resolves or not. So in this case, it's very clearly resolving to kind of a nice sweetness at the back of the mouth. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that is almost wraps up this episode. Gonna just be dumping these guys together so you can see what the super brew brings out. You can see that they're both going to be much darker. Don't recommend drinking this. Purpose of this is so we can just let those leaves soak and take a look at the wet leaves. So be dumping these out and bringing that camera in closer. Alright, so you can see pretty clearly here that this tea over on my left is the ripe, much darker leaves, even though it's younger. And over here, we have the raw pu'erh, and you can tell it's just raw, it's greener. As it ages, we would expect that will darken over time. If you age it in a more hot and humid climate, like Hong Kong or Taiwan, it's all relative, that will start to darken a little bit quicker than if it's stored in somewhere like Kunming, Beijing, Seattle. Most of the places in the West would be considered quite dry, unless you are somewhere like Florida. So thank you all for tuning in. Let me know if this is helpful. I will see y'all next time.